So, can you give us a very brief synopsis of A Call to Farms?
No. Brief? God. The book is brief. Look. So, Call to Farms is a kind of a series of short meditation-y, I don't know what the right word is, but little thoughts on the subject of food systems, specifically organic and local food systems, and nonviolence and peace. I wrote it the month after the Ukraine war started. And I've been at this for a while, so I had a few previous books on similar subjects about local food and new visions of investing, something called Slow Money. This came out as just kind of an ingenuous response to, oh my God, are we really going to have a third world war like that? And of course everybody in the world was thinking the same thing, but I started writing some things and sharing it with friends, and it turned into this little volume.
Mm-hmm. So what inspired you to write this book? I mean, you talked about the Ukraine. Was that a direct inspiration, the Ukraine war?
So I've been a little thread that's been kind of weaving through my stuff for the last 20 years is the nexus of what's called the food movement and something that we kind of don't have anymore, which I'm just going to do more air quotes here, a peace movement. And of course, when someone my age does air quotes about the peace movement, we're kind of referring back to the 60s and the war in Vietnam and whatnot. Things aren't all the same, but then again, history is not that different either. So in this cycle of violence that's going on right now, of course, Gaza hadn't happened yet, so this is all, we're talking a couple of years ago when I wrote this. But, this eruption of militarism and populism and xenophobia and tribal, all these things, it's not like it never happened before. It's happening in a certain way now with a certain virulence and whatnot. But I guess that's definitely not a brief answer to your question. When Russia invaded Ukraine, I just realized I really want to go deeper on the nonviolence thing, because to me, local food is about healing. It's about reconnecting at the local level. And that's basically about kind of healing the wounds of a violent economy. There's overt violence, there's economic violence, exploitation, all kinds of things. So it's all one thing to me. This is another a little bit of a deeper, more contemplative shot at the target.
So the book says the subtitle is "Some Thoughts on Food, Money, and Nonviolence in Honor of Wendell Berry." What was your encounter with Wendell Berry's work? What does he mean to you? What does he mean to all these things that you just talked about in your thinking?
Well, yeah, anybody who knows anything about me or Wendell Berry knows that like half of my words are like probably were stuck in there by Wendell Berry, which is meant to be a compliment to Wendell, not an insult. So I've had the good pleasure of meeting Wendell, and his daughter is one of my sort of kitchen cabinet members. And but I mean, he was a total inspiration to me. Basically, in the 1970s, which is when I graduated from college, I kind of came across two books. One was The Unsettling of America by Wendell Berry, and the other was Small is Beautiful by F. Schumacher. And I sometimes joke those two men ruined my life, because after I read those books, I thought, okay, I believe that's true. I believe that they're speaking the truth. If I really believe that, what am I/we going to do about it? And that's been my journey ever since, is trying to bring those ideas into an entrepreneurial context where they can actually take root in the economy. And that's kind of a challenge, interesting challenge. The specific reference here is meant to be a reference to an essay Wendell wrote in 1969, I believe it was, called Some Thoughts on Citizenship in Honor of Donald Pratt. And that's where the "in honor of Wendell Berry" thing comes from. Wendell was teaching English at the University of Kentucky at the time. He was a young man then, and one of his students got arrested for protesting the war in Vietnam, and so he wrote an essay about civil disobedience, and could he really change anything by civil disobedience, or was the deeper answer to change the way we were living, going back to the land. Now remember, in 1969, there was a whole lot of things of back to the land going on and whatnot. So this is, as this thing took shape, I said, you know what, this is like my homage to that essay, and it does touch on the issues of civil disobedience and conscientious objection, but it suggests a new idea, which I'm now working on the sequel to this. The working title is Unconscientious Affection, and it's meant to be a kind of serious but semi-playful, serious kind of take on, rather than conscientious objection, which resisting that which we do not wish to be complicit in, kind of a proactive leaning into that which we wish to see happen. And the word affection comes from Wendell too. He wrote he had a famous speech called "It All Turns on Affection," which turned into a little book. And that's maybe more of an answer than you wanted. Wendell has had a major impact on my life in all kinds of ways.
You've mentioned slow money, slow food movements. For people who don't really know what that means, can you give us just a brief?
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. So, slow food movement started in Italy. The date that is usually used is 1989. Carlo Petrini is a wonderfully brilliant, charismatic social entrepreneur who pronounced when McDonald's was opening in Rome, "We don't want fast food here, we want slow food." and then the slow food movement was born. It's now an international movement. It has little groups in over 100 countries around the world. And it's promoting indigenous, heirloom, biodiverse, artisanal, a whole bunch of nested values about not industrial food, not global food, but local food, with all the cultural and biological richness that entails. And when I met them in the year 2000, I had been writing a little bit about what I was calling patient capital, and I was doing some work in finance at the time with some investors that were trying to get a little bit out of the box, get one foot out of the box maybe. And so we were writing about patient capital and thinking longer term and maybe relaxing some of our expectations for quick money and all the rest. And when I met the slow food people, oh my God, patient capital is actually slow money. That's the ultimate expression. That's where that came from, and I stuck with it ever since. So now there is a small movement called Slow Money. We've almost $100 million has gone to 1,000 small food enterprises and organic farms in dozens of communities around the country. We have a new group just started in Israel. They just made their first loan 2 days ago, despite everything that's going on there, which is like, I don't know how that's a thing. And we've been mostly U.S. though, but I think we're just at the point now where things, maybe this next wave of activity is going to start sparking around the world a little bit more. And if you let me say one more thing about that work on the ground, it's mentioned in here, but this is not meant to be a puff piece for slow money. It was meant to be a way more personal, or it is a way more personal thing than that. But of course, my thoughts revolve around what we're trying to do in the world, so the work is in there a little bit. We are now, we're sitting in Boulder now filming this. We have a group in Boulder that is making 0% loans to local farmers. About 115 Boulderites are members. People contribute money as a donation and then vote on which farmers should get a 0% loan. The money stays local, circulates. So it's very grassroots, kind of a compost model of finance, if you want to put a metaphor on there, as opposed to a kind of synthetic fertilizer, grow fast and have lots of things to sell people a model. And it's a really beautiful model. So we have 5 of these groups in the U.S., 1 in Israel just started, and so that's the current manifestation of the slow money movement. And we just launched a new website. I apologize if this sounds like a promotion, because I don't really mean it that way, but it's just part of the work, called beatcoin.org, and it's a irreverent, countervailing, non-cryptocurrency, just as a way for people to make small donations to support the emergence of these 0% loan groups around the world. So that's the work.
Great. So we talked about Wendell Berry, but if our customers wanted to read more on these values that are kind of embodied in the terms slow food, slow money, what books would you recommend? What books have you enjoyed on that kind of topics?
That's an interesting one, because I just have stacks of them everywhere, like every writer does. Well, I mean, I would just stick with honestly, for the purpose of this, I would actually circle back to my Bibles, which are like The Unsettling of America, Small is Beautiful. I'm doing that on purpose because, like, I was just downstairs looking at the Chelsea Green, current list of Chelsea Green, and I was involved with Chelsea Green for many years. There's a plethora of stuff coming out on all angles of everything from guts, nutrients in your gut, to fertility in the soil and nutrients, and it's all good. I mean, so that's what's happening now. There's a ferment of activity, but the way my thinking has evolved and the way my life has evolved, I've been trying to go down to what actions can we take to change the roots of the economy. Because as long as the economy is commodifying everything and taking all the money out of communities and sending it to Wall Street or cyberspace, we're never going to actually be able to do all the things we want. We're always going to be begging for crumbs back from this broken system. So, so going back to the Bibles with very small b, of Wendell Berry and E.F. Schumacher, these are seminal works that are so important for people today to read, even though they were written 50 years ago. And that's why I'm actually calling them out. They're very much in my mind because I've just started talking about this book, and that comes up all the time. What was the inspiration? How would I say it? This is a really bad thing to say in a bookstore. There are so many books printed every year, and we're not getting the change we want. Now that's not the job of a bookstore to create the change. It's the idea to get ideas out there. And I think we would all be well served to return to some of the seminal ideas that kind of started us all off on the modern environmental movement, and really reaffirm what the basic intention is. And if the intention is to change the economy towards more health and peace, we have to go deep. And Wendell Berry and E.F. Schumacher are the best, deepest. So they each have a number of different books, but Schumacher's best book is, I think most people say, Small is Beautiful. Wendell has like 50 books. They're all good. They're all interesting. I don't know how he's not won a Nobel Prize at this point. He has novels, he has essays, he has poetry, and it's all good. It's all really good. But I would go back to the source, which is The Unsettling of America, and I think he pretty much considers that his magnum opus, even though he's recently written some other very big tomes. But as a statement of what happens to a culture when it loses its connection to the land, and when it stops being a steward of the land, and all the ripple effects that has. I don't think anything better will probably ever be written.
So, Woody, I was hoping that you could read us a passage from your book.
I would be honored and happy to do so. Okay, so A Call to Farms, Some Thoughts on Food, Money, and Nonviolence in honor of Wendell Berry. And this is written as a series of very short kind of thought vectors, all circling around the themes of nonviolence and local food. So I'm just going to read the first little section, and then I'll jump to the fifth section. This is a call to farms. It is and is not a response. It is not a response to any one brigade's route, the military mind that mapped it, or the propaganda that is translating it into ideological talking points. It is a response to the forces that turned low these few brief millennia, and lower these few brief centuries, and lower yet. You'd think low surely, but there seems no end to the great acceleration. These few brief decades, these few brief tweets, these few brief algorithmic breaths, these few brief ultra-fast bursts of ones and zeros. The fertile crescent into the oil patch, and amber waves of grain into food as a store of cheap, shelf-stable calories, food as fuel for internal combustion engines, food as industrial power. This is a call to farms because there is healing to be done. Trust to be restored, mutuality to be rekindled, biodiversity to be valued, conviviality to be nurtured, carbon to be sequestered, bread to be broken, affection to be shared, humility to be cultivated. It is not as important to be against capitalism or against socialism as it is to be for humanism. Any economic system that belittles humans, that puts institutions and ideologies and financial abstractions ahead of people and the places where we live, is not an economic system under whose banner we should rally. To be for humanism is to harbor a certain skepticism when it comes to consumerism, investorism, exceptionalism, fundamentalism, and militarism. This is the beauty and the subtle power of community-supported agriculture. Community-supported agriculture could be described as 1 part capitalism, 1 part socialism, 2 parts localism, but such a description would belie the degree to which, in their informality and deep mutuality, CSAs constitute a kind of stand against isms altogether. The first wave of community-supported agriculture, which grew from the first CSA in the U.S. in 1986 to some 7,000 CSAs with 600,000 members today, is an indicator. We must build on this foundation, heading toward a food system in which meaningful portions of the food supply are produced locally and regionally. How much is meaningful? Over time, we may arrive at a percentage. For now, we can just affirm that a few percent is not enough. What impels us is not just the desire to know our local farmers, although knowing them is surely a good thing. What impels us is not just the desire for fresh, toxin-free food and carbon-rich soil, although these are surely goods of the highest order too. What impels us is not just the desire to reduce the outsourcing of food production to corporations controlled by invisible shareholders, although enhancing local control of food and reducing the extent of our dependence on global supply chains is surely a worthy pursuit. What impels us is the deepest of suspicions that structural reform is needed and that it may never be possible from the top down. When we send our money to Wall Street, Washington, and Silicon Valley, it doesn't readily come back in ways that can repair the damage done by the sending.